welcome to another episode of Journey Mappers. Today I have Breckin, who is the president of Formula SAE. Thank you so much for being here with us today, Breckin.
Of course, I'm super stoked to be here.
Well, I did want to just ask a little bit more about Formula SAE. Could you tell me what is Formula SAE and what does it stand for and what's its mission as well?
Yeah, of course. So Formula SAE stands for Formula Society of Automotive Engineers, and SAE is an international organization, and Formula SAE is a collegiate racing competition that falls underneath SAE. And Formula stands for the style of car that we build. If you've ever watched Formula One, it's an open wheel style race car with like aerodynamics on it, and yeah, that's the style of car. And the club falls directly beneath the School of Engineering and Computer Science, but it's not limited to engineers or computer science majors, and we have a very broad team of about 150 people who get to build a race car every year. And I'd say during the summer, we start researching and developing our projects that go on the car. Fall, we start designing those projects. Winter, we start manufacturing, and then summer is assembly and race time. So
that's awesome. So it sounds like to me that Formula allows the students to get really hands-on projects that they could like get their feet wet, as well as like just really explore what it's like to work on the cars, right?
Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit more about some of the projects that they do?
Yeah, of course. I mean, if you've ever seen the car, there's pictures of the car everywhere. Almost everything on that car we design, manufacture, and assemble in-house. And like I said, we have a pretty hefty team of people to be able to do that, ranging from frame design to the steering wheel. And we have people who design all that stuff, and you look it up, and it really allows you to do things that classes don't really teach you. Classes, it's more conceptual, whereas when you get to Formula, you have a problem, and you kind of have to figure out how to solve it, regardless of what the project is. If you're building a steering wheel, how can you make it so that the steering wheel fits your hands comfortably throughout a 45-minute race, and it never gets uncomfortable? And you fix one problem, you find another, and you fix that one, and then you find another, and it just keeps progressing until you get to your final goal. So when it comes to hands-on, it's probably some of the best experience you can get as a student.
No, I love that. I feel like that is really important. It's just hearing some students say, like, I wish I could get that hands-on experience, or even particularly for myself, like being in college, it's like you sit in the classroom, for hours, and it's just like, okay, I really want to apply this in a real-life setting.
Yeah.
So just being able to, like, be a part of that, I'm sure that is exciting too.
Yeah.
So I know you talked about the racing. So could you tell us a little bit more, like, are you racing other schools? Are you racing each other? Like, what exactly does that include?
Yeah, great question. So our main race is at Michigan International Speedway, and that's like the North American SAE competition, and we're lucky enough to be an hour and a half away from it. But at this competition, I'd say that's like the pride and glory that we build for. There's 120 teams from all around the world. You've got teams from Canada, Mexico, Brazil, Europe, overseas, and they'll fly out here. And we're actually hosting a Venezuelan team this year, and they'll be in our shop and about a week before comp, which is May 14th, I want to say, May 12th through the 14th, something like that. And they're flying their car out here, and they'll be in our shop. And once competition comes, they'll drive out there with us. And you got, like I said, you got teams from California, Colorado, and all throughout the states. And these are all collegiate teams, and these are all students that build these cars, and we get to race. And that's our main competition. And this past summer, we had our own Grand Prix at Oakland University, and I believe we hosted 9 teams. And that was another great opportunity to get more of the local teams out here and just, have more experience like on the track and racing. And throughout the fall, we have another race at Pittsburgh and another race in Toronto, Canada. And these are all smaller races that, like I said, just allow the students to go out and race their car a little more.
So could you also talk about, like, what inspired you specifically, like, coming in as a college student? What inspired you to want to join the student work?
Yeah. So growing up, I was always, like, my family just kind of enjoyed creating things. I grew up around 3D printers and CNC machines and just a generally creative family. And I'd say that's, like, the root of, like, where all of my interests started. My mom's side of the family and dad's side are both heavily involved in, like, the car community, which is where, like, the more specific focus came from. And then more directly related to Oakland, I remember going to Autorama my senior year of high school, and I didn't even know that this club existed. And I came across the previous president and a couple of their members and talked to them about, like, the car and what the club even was. And that was when I was like, yeah, like maybe I should go to Oakland and do this stuff. And I believe the day that I committed to Oakland, I went on a tour. And if you've ever been in the EC, the second floor has a window looking down on the shop. And I remember I was with my mom on that tour, and I looked down on the SAE shop and saw the car. I saw people working on it. And like I said, I think I committed that night, and here I am.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And now you're the president. That's a big deal.
I know. It's been a long way coming.
So I'm just generally curious.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that we talk about a lot as a career and life design team is trying new things, exploring, as well as just being curious.
Yeah.
So in what ways do you feel like Formula SAE fosters that environment for students to feel like they can try new things or get curious?
Yeah. When it comes to like new students and new members who come in curious and have that like new curiosity the same way I did and still do, I encourage questions. Like every time we have to do safety training so that people are safe in the shop. And one thing that I push for all of the students is to ask questions. If you're worried about using a tool, or you're curious on how this thing works or how to do this, ask questions, embrace the curiosity. And we have like certain projects that we set aside for new members to do, because there are some projects that are more senior member projects that are difficult, such as vehicle dynamics, and we have super easy projects, and we try to find a project that lays right in the center of that to like foster the curiosity and allow new members to get their hands on and experience a lot of things. But for me personally, questions are huge. Like questions are the fastest way that you can learn, and we were all in the same spot, right? We were all that curious new member. I'm still a curious member, and I still ask our senior members questions on how to do certain things.
So could you talk a little bit more about the project specifically for like people that might come from a different background or a different major? So I know you talked about like the different like levels of projects. So what if you do have a student that is a business major that is interested in joining Formula SAE? In what ways would they be able to explore in that student work, or even just learn what it has to offer? Yeah.
So when it comes to like projects more specifically, and great, I'm glad that you brought up the whole business side, because a lot of people assume that it's only engineering and it can't be, there's no business, but arguably half of our club is business. And for example, if we have a new business member come in right now and they're like, hey, I want to get involved. Where do I start? They can go to their subsystem meetings. We have subsystem meetings throughout the week, and it really starts from there. You ask the subsystem lead, like, hey, how can I get started? And the project might be, we're hosting a banquet or an unveil event after our competition, and we need to make flyers for that, right? So that's something it's not super easy, and it's not super difficult. But it's a good project to get involved, and Morgan, our business director, may assign that project to a newer member and say, hey, you've got this date and it's at this time. Make a cool flyer that we can hand out to campus. So that's more of like a specific project that we would assign to somebody.
That's awesome. So that I'm assuming that allows them to get more of that marketing experience for the team, as well as that insight into like the mechanical or the electrical side as well, right?
Yeah.
That's awesome. So could you tell me a little bit about like your journey professionally, like how or in what ways would you say that Formula SAE has helped you develop yourself professionally and build connections and relationships?
Yeah, that's another great question. Very broad, lots to talk about as far as professional development goes. We work a lot with sponsors, right? The car is not free, and we have to get the money somewhere. So our business and marketing team will reach out to companies directly and go network with a bunch of different companies. And like, let's say we need carbon fiber, we'll go reach out to a company that supplies carbon fiber and say, hey, we'll give you a deal of the sponsor package if you give us carbon fiber. And over time, you start to develop honestly, like a personal connection to the people who run those companies and to the people who you contact. And part of our sponsorship package is a resume book. So like after a certain amount of time of a company being a sponsor, we have a resume book of like members, and we will send them our resume book, because to these companies, it's an investment. They're giving us money, and in return, they're getting good engineers back, or good marketers or business people, right? So like I said, like having that personal connection with those companies and being able to talk to them and ask them questions about certain things is beyond valuable.
So what about yourself? I know that we talked a little bit about your internship coming up this summer. So could you tell me, like, in what ways that you feel that the student org has helped you, like, prepare yourself for that, as well as, like, get that connection as well?
Yeah, and like we talked about hands-on. That's probably the biggest thing, is having that experience in your belt, and you can talk about the experience that you have and have a deeper level of connection. Because I talked to my soon-to-be boss at Autorama last year, and that's kind of how it all like sparked. I met him at the racetrack 2 years ago, but then we reconnected at Autorama, and had I not been with the team, and had I not been with the car and had the experience that I had, that probably never would have happened, and I probably wouldn't have this internship right now. But being able to go to Autorama and talk to him, and they're actually supplying our vinyl this year, and that was the conversation that we had at Autorama, saying, hey, like, come check out our car. And they walk over there, and you start to talk about all the projects that you've done. You start to talk about the things that you may need in the upcoming year. And like I said, he'll be sponsoring our vinyl this year. And we work with companies like Ford. Ford invites us out to their wind tunnel every year, which is absolutely phenomenal. I've been able to go the past 2 years, and just having that connection, I wouldn't have that outside of Formula. Had I not joined the club, like, I wouldn't have even known that existed. So as far as professional development, there's everywhere in between that you can get involved.
And I do love that you touched on like the networking aspect of it, of like how important that is to build those connections, right? And how that gets your foot in the door.
Yeah.
And it seems like that is something that most definitely worked in your case. Like just like walking up to this person and saying like, hey, I'm looking for an internship, or, could you tell me more about your opportunities, and here's what I have to offer. And I think that really does go a long way of being able to articulate that, as well as like the projects that you've done and showcase that at the racetrack too.
And like when you talk to those people, networking, it just turns into a web. Like recently we've been working with machine shops to get all of our parts machined and built for this upcoming car. We might reach out to a machine shop and they go, sorry, like we can't do that right now, but we know of 3 more shops that might be willing to do it. So now not only have you talked to one company, but you've got 4 more to go to that could potentially sponsor you, and you build more relationships, and those machine shops have friends, and it just turns into like that deep web of connections. And like I said, having that personal connection, you can email them if you're looking for an internship. Say, hey, we've been working for the past year together. You've been helping us out, and I'd be super interested in working with you guys. And like I said, without Formula or without being in an organization like this, you wouldn't really have that.
And I would imagine it's like less intimidating too, because you've already built that connection.
Exactly.
And you already like had conversations with them.
Yeah.
So it's like you actually understand the flow of how to communicate with them moving forward. So I would imagine it's way less intimidating.
100%.
So that's really great. So if a student is unsure that they want to commit to the student org, what are some things that you would suggest that they do to like get their feet wet and to kind of like put themselves out there without feeling like they're like biting off more than they could chew?
Yeah. If we have a new member, which that happens a lot, we have a lot of people who are scared. They're like, this seems like a lot, because they look at the car and they see all the moving parts and, all the people deep into their projects. And I'm not going to lie, like it's intimidating. And a lot of students are like afraid of getting that deep into a project. But one unique thing about our club is we don't really have any requirements. We have expectations, but requirements, not so much. Teams such as MSU, their Formula team, they require like a minimum of like 30 hours in the shop per week, just because they're a larger school, and that's the way that works. But with us, if we have a student who is unsure on what they want to do or how long they want to be on the team for, we try to cater to that and say, show up to, if you're interested in powertrain, show up to the meeting and talk with a couple of those people. And if that doesn't spark your interest, then you can go show up to the chassis meeting, and just we allow members to have some time to figure it out and see what they're enjoying. And if they don't enjoy it, then it is what it is. But we definitely try to give them every opportunity to get involved in every aspect of the team.
So what are some things that you're excited about in planning for this upcoming semester or year that you really would like to share?
Yeah, there's a lot that the team is excited about. Right now, we're in the process of building our 2025 car, and that's a whole process in and itself, and everybody's super excited about doing that. And once we get that car built in the upcoming, in a couple, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, we have our main competition. That's what we build the car for. All these people put all that work in and all the hours and all the time and dedication for this race. And, once we get there and we start racing, it's a feeling that, like, I can't really describe. So that's very exciting for the whole team. In the summer, we have a couple more races, Pittsburgh, Toronto, as I mentioned before. And then in the upcoming fall, we will be hosting the Oakland University Grand Prix again, which we held for the first time last year, and it went very, very well. So those are a couple things that we're super excited for. We're also planning on hosting a banquet in the summertime, and that's like kind of more of an unveil event to show our new car.
Awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to those things as well. And then my last question for you. I know that Formula SAE is looking for new members. Mm-hmm. So what are some things or requirements that you typically look for new members, as well as what is some advice that you would give to a student that is interested in joining Formula SAE?
Yeah, and personally, this is one of the coolest things about the team is that the requirements are very minimal. You have to be an Oakland University student, and you have to have an Oakland email. But as far as like actual requirements go, that's really it. We expect you to stay and show up and, complete your projects. But if we have a journalist major on the team. I believe we've had a dietitian on the team before. So like as far as requirements, it's a very broad spectrum. And I touched on it earlier. For new students who are interested in joining, we all started in the same spot. We were all, clueless, curious, new students. And I mean, we have master's students join who, they're master's students and they're still equally as curious. So my number one thing is just asking questions, right? That is, I ask so many questions, and I think it's the fastest way you can learn. Because like I said, we're all curious. We all share the same interest regardless of the experience in the major. So having that connection is pretty fantastic, and it may seem intimidating, but I promise you it's not as bad as it looks.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. Well, it was a pleasure having you on the podcast today.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
And thank you so much. Thank you all for watching. This was our episode of Journey Mappers. I do also want to share the importance of joining student org. So if you are currently on the edge of joining a student org, or you're looking to possibly join one, most definitely look at the options and maybe talk to some of the presidents that are available within those student orgs to get more insight. Is it okay if some of the students reach out to you if they have questions?
Course. Yeah.
Awesome. So you heard it here. If you have any questions about the student org, most definitely feel free to reach out to Breckin, because he is a great source to get that information from firsthand. And it does look really good on your resume. So we just want to make sure that students out there are considering adding that on their resumes and getting themselves out there and getting that experience, as well as learning and doing projects as well. But thanks again for watching Journey Mappers. It was a pleasure. Have a great day.